Be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
We're gonna go 2 readings on it. Does anybody have any questions on this? This is the project that just won't go away and won't stop changing, so, yes.
Hopefully this is the last change, yeah,
Talk
so.
about the soil's bad. Can you explain to that about the soil being bad?
Sorry, say that again?
About the soil being bad? What do you mean?
So it's, the material we found there is peat, which, and I'm not a geotech, I don't know a ton about soils, but it's just, it's very poor for foundations. And there's, I think something like 15 to 20 plus feet of it as you get down into the area where the sewer's going to lay, and then below it. So again, when you put anything on that, just the soils are so wet, so poor, have no bearing capacity that again, it's very likely that sewer and the structures that we build to replace this structure would sink unless we have a good foundation. So what they're going to do, again, they're going to build those piles. I think they're every maybe 8 feet, and those piles are going to be driven down to areas where we do have good soil with the bearing capacity, and then those soils will hold the piles in place, which will in turn hold the kind of the reinforced concrete footer, if you will, or foundation for that pipe.
Okay, so it's like a peat bog?
Yeah, I don't.
Similar.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, is what.
Because that's the problem that's been over on Wheeling all these years.
Yeah, I think there's
hasn't
similar
been
type
fixed
soils
yet.
over in like the Wheeling, West Main Street area near the river there, and that's why you see a lot of those kind of undulations in the pavements and whatnot. So yeah, those are the same sort of things in that area that we're in. We of course don't have any roads, thankfully, but we do have that sewer, and again, we've seen the results of that with that manhole sinking, unfortunately.
The only question I would have, would you expect to find more problems along the way?
Yeah, there's, we always joke that or say in the office that, you dig any different part of the city, you're going to find different soils all over the place. And you put up a boring 50 feet, 20 feet from one boring, you might find something completely different. So I don't know that we're aware of, anything else in that area right now that's had a similar issue. And, we cross our fingers. Hopefully we don't see anything like that. But
Mr. Croft?
So they did geotechnical testing then to determine how deep the soils were loose?
yeah, they went, I believe we went 75 feet down. We did 2 soil borings, and then we did an area for like groundwater monitoring as well. We have a groundwater monitoring well in there as well, so we can determine where groundwater is and help with determining dewatering costs and that sort of thing. So yeah, like I said, we went both borings that what we did in the areas where the 2 new manholes are going to be placed went 75 feet down, so we could determine how far is it do we need to go to get out of that peat and find some good soil.
The distance again was what?
Sorry,
How far down?
75 feet were the 2 borings that we did in the vicinities where those manholes were going to be.
Further questions? 2 readings again
Two
on
readings.
this particular
Mr.
piece?
McDaniels will second.
And Mr. McDaniel will second that. All right. Very good. Thank you, Stephen.
Yep,
We
thank you.
appreciate it. So we'll go 2 readings on Resolution 3019. Next item I have is Resolution 3119, and that's a resolution to correct items in the 2019 city budget and to appropriate $25,000. So Auditor Nettles, this is your piece. You want to explain it to us?
This is,
Please.
as the mayor and I were discussing the budget, realized there were a few errors in the budget that happened, whether it be for probation that was shorted $25,000 from the general fund that goes over to help offset their probation grant. And then, of course, it's aligning some budget versus cash, where we have one that the budget can't exceed the actual cash on hand. So even though we're dealing in 20 cents, by state audit and ORC have to align that. And then I had some rounding issues for debt payments. And then we had LDOT needed to adjust their budget for a piece of equipment that they were selling and then purchasing another one that they were getting from an internal department, selling it within the city. that they have to align and appropriate those monies in order to facilitate another purchase. So we just I included into this piece rather than having him bring a separate piece to council. It's just more of timing issue. And then for the mayor's grant writer's position, that is now becoming an independent contractor because this person does provide the service as an independent and provides the service outside the city as well. We're just realigning current budgeted monies and salaries into contract labor.
Questions? Just seems like an accounting cleanup, and moving the money to pay the grant writer as a contracted employee as opposed to a part-time person. Your timing on this?
2 readings if possible.
2 readings. Seeing no further questions, Mrs. Downhour, would you second that, please?
Yep.
The 2 readings on 3119. The next item I have is Resolution 3219. That's a resolution to approve an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging Company doing business as One Right. So I will refer to Law Director Allum on this if you want to give us the rundown.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Stoughton. I think actually I will defer to either Mayor Scheffler or to Mr. Pettit here, as they were both on the negotiating team with regard to this particular.
Great, I didn't see Mr. Pettit sneak in there, so.
All right.
Mr. Pettit.
Well, Blue Label Digital is in an expansion phase. They had originally had, many years ago, over 100 employees, and they had dropped down to less than 50, and they've changed their model plan and their business plan. And the growth tick is certainly on the way up. They're doing very well. They've already hired about 25 this year and looking at 30 additional. Now, for the abatement, they're adding 20,000 square feet onto their facility to handle the growth. And the building and the grounds, if you remember, they annexed around 2002, 2003, and they did not get into the CRA change, the Community Reinvestment Area change, when that was done, when they annexed. So if they had been in the CRA, there would have been no action required by us, and it would have just been a application and pretty much automatic. But because they were outside, they've asked for assistance for their growth and for this extension or expansion. They have longer-term plans for additional building as well, and have worked very well with the schools in internships and other training that they're going to work with the schools, actually. So it's very nice to get some future jobs there. So the abatement is for 15 years, 100%.
Okay, question?
I was just going to add to that we're bringing in the legislation now because, of course, you saw the exhibit attached as the application, which is what we needed before you. But we also wanted you to have an opportunity to look at this. The letter, as I understand it, recommendation letter from the negotiating committee should be coming to us sometime, I think, this week, at which point then we have like a 14-day turnaround period. So I wanted to bring this legislation into you tonight so we had an opportunity to talk about it with the anticipation that at the next meeting we would look for passage of this to be within compliance of that 14-day turnaround.
I did receive my copy of that letter today.
Oh, you did receive it
So
today?
it is
Okay.
out.
Yeah, so if we have a reading tonight and we're able to pass on the second reading at our next meeting, that will be timely.
Well, it's certainly good news. I mean, you know, expansion's always a good thing. So, are there any questions for Mr. Pettit or Law Director Allum or the mayor or anyone? Very good. Then we will ask for 2 readings on 3219. And Mr. Daniel, will you second that, please?
Yes.
All right, moving on. Next item I have is Resolution 3319. That's a resolution to appropriate from the Gas Fund 602, the Water Fund 603, the Water Pollution Fund 604, the Stormwater Fund 606, and the General Fund 101, and to an issue a then and now certificate to pay PNC. This is specific to legal services we received, so I assume Law Director Allham's going to bring us up to speed on this.
Yes, Chairman Stoughton. This is a piece, as you all recall, we're working on a comprehensive right-of-way ordinance. We had money that had been encumbered for that process, of course, with the changeover to the new year, and the enterprise funds, or those at least in the right-of-way, we're participating in this with the general fund, so this is basically a reappropriation, if you will, of those dollars so we can continue that project.
Yeah, this was appropriated at the end of last year, then of course it gets unappropriated when the new year turns over. What's your timing on this?
If we could do that, 2 readings, that's possible.
We can do 2 readings. Holly, would you please second that? Okay, well, so we'll go 2 readings on 3319. Next item I have is 3419. That's a resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of pipe and fittings for the Division of Water not to exceed $200,000. That's coming through water. Mr. Woodard.
This is more or less an annual piece of legislation. We need to get our stock up on our water lines for 12-inch piping, and we will ask suspension because we'd like to get this ordered right away.
Well, that's all well and good, but Mr. Nixon is not going to be denied his TV time.
Boy,
So, Mr.
And
Nixon.
he told me to handle it.
Well, you did, and I can sit down, so thank you, sir. You got everything.
Tell him what a nice job he did.
He did a wonderful job. This is an annual piece of legislation. We're just like to get the ball rolling because we still have to advertise. We still have to enter into a contract. We have to get a contract back, place the order, receive the order, and then hopefully have everything in when we can start some spring construction. So that's why I'm stressing out the chair and asking for a first reading suspension.
Okay. All right.
And I learned never again to believe him that he doesn't want TV time.
He's a darn liar, isn't he? All right. So we're asking suspension on 3419.
And
Your
that'll be
second
Mr.
was Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
All right. So Mr. Woodyard and Mr. McDaniel, you're going to be busy.
Sounds like it.
All right, moving on. Next item I have is ordinance, what did I do? I messed that up all crazy. But the next one is actually ordinance 419, and this is basically an updated version of the non-union pay ordinance. And in here, there's a couple of changes. I believe the mayor's executive assistant is properly graded at an 11. I think we must have passed it as a 12 in December. And then the grant writer position has been eliminated. Are those the only changes?
Yeah.
Well, I have a hand up over here, and she says no. Clerk Sandy.
The second change is the only change. The first change you spoke about was passed.
Oh.
Yeah, if
Oh.
you look right by,
I'm being corrected. Thank you.
if you
So-
look right where it says PT Grant Writer, 21119, that's the only change.
Okay.
She does that a lot, but.
I suspect this happened a few times to you.
It's because she's always right.
Yeah, she is always right. That's the one thing we do know. All right, so we're just striking the part-time grant writer out of the budget. Why did we need to bring this through? Just because, or did you feel like it was the right thing to do, or?
It was in the pay ordinance before, so we
Okay.
took it out.
All right, so 3 readings is fine, I assume? All right, so we'll go 3 readings on ordinance 419, and since it's an even number, it's Mr. McDaniel again. All right, moving right along. We have departmental updates. Do we have any departmental updates this evening? Departmental updates going once, going twice, gone. Mr. All, did you have any updates?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Stone. Mike and I are here, we had a call the other day with a lot of the parties that are going to be involved in this refunding of the prepaid gas deal. A lot of this, as you know, the bonds and things like that will actually happen through the Port Authority and that board. But we just wanted to give you a heads up as they're starting to prepare documents and things are coming forward. We'll probably have a piece or two of legislation to come through council. And I just wanted to give you all the heads up. I mean, one of those I know will be a preliminary official statement will come out of this group. And I'm not sure what else, but we wanted to talk about it with you tonight a little bit so that with the timing of this and trying to get this deal restructured, if you will, we may be bringing in legislation and asking for suspension. So we just kind of wanted to give you all a heads up to that effect. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
As we go into this bond transaction, timing is everything that we can do the best we can for the city. And so having everything in place, we recognize it's moving very quick. It's moving very quick for us to stay up with. But if we can get everything done, that way when the trigger's ready to go, we're ready to go, and the market conditions will dictate that to help us achieve our best discount.
Seems to be the standard operating procedure when every other time we've done this prepaid deals, we have to basically, we're looking at rates and timing, and we had, a lot of that legislation is kind of at once. So it's nothing new to us. It's really a renewal. So
There is no expenditures or anything with this that's coming in from the city. It's just approvals.
Perfect. Very good. Thank you. All right, so we have an update on the prepaid gas deal. Are there any other departmental updates this evening? Departmental updates gone. I will defer to President Uhl for tonight's meeting prep.
Well, you've skillfully taken care of it there, Mr. Stone, so we're all set.
Wow.
I know.
I got chastised by one, and I got a fake compliment from another. Isn't that wonderful?
It was a real compliment.
That's a
The
good day.
sincerity behind it. And
Any other items for finance? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
In a second, we are adjourned, Mr. President, 6:18.
the regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin promptly at 6:30.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
The Frank E. Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster or 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Almost everyone needs a car to get from point A to point B, and many families have two or more cars. At Carriage Company, located at 1031 North Memorial Drive in Lancaster, we specialize in hard-to-find used cars. Due to the recent success of the new car market, there is a large inventory of used cars available for resale. We can help you find exactly what you're looking for. With over 15 years at this location and 27 years experience in the business, we are the best place to go to find your next car, truck, van, or SUV. As a member of the Better Business Bureau, we are a Carfax Advantage dealer and offer great financing rates through a local area bank, with warranties available on most vehicles. We know your time is valuable, so we take special pride in making sure that you get what you came for at a price that you can afford.
Come into the Carriage Company and check out our sweet deals.
Stop by today and let us help you, or visit us online at carriagecompany.com.
Thank you. Everyone, please make sure your microphones are clicked on. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bouse? Mrs. Bobbitt? Here. Mrs. Downhour?
Here.
Mr. Groff?
Here.
Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
Mr. Stoughton?
Here.
Mrs. Teener? Here. Mr. Witchard?
Here.
Let the record reflect that 8 out of 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening. Mr. Stoughton.
Make a motion that we excuse Mr. Bouse from tonight's meeting.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to excuse Mr. Bouse from tonight's meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated January 28th, 2019.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
I have 4. Email dated February 1st, 2019 regarding committee agenda submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated February 4th, 2019 regarding draft meeting minutes submitted by Mr. Schoonover. Email dated February 6th, 2019 regarding committee agenda submitted by Mr. Schoonover. And finally, an email dated February 7th, 2019 regarding Service Safety Director Paul Martin's schedule submitted by Service Safety Director Paul Martin.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the reports of city officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are 3. Certified letter dated January 24th, 2019 regarding multifamily funding programs of OHFA submitted by Catherine Fennell, NHP Foundation. Notice to the Legislative Authority of a new liquor license to Family Dollar Stores of Ohio, LLC, doing business as Family Dollar Store, 26684, located at 1706 East Main Street, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control. And finally, a notice to the Legislative Authority of a new liquor license to the Miller Family Food Service, LLC, doing business at Taverna Bravo, located at 512 East Main Street, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Tonight we continue our series on highlighting great things that are happening in Lancaster by hearing from the young professionals of Lancaster. Nicole Davis with the steering committee of the Young Professionals of Lancaster is with us tonight. Ms. Davis, thank you for joining us. Please feel free to all right, pass out, and you're up.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me here, Dr. Uhl. I am here to talk to you about a really exciting group of people known as millennials. Silent.
Yay!
I love that. Yeah. You know, we're probably like your kids' age, maybe. We're not Generation Z. We're a little one up from that, and we are what comprise what is known as the Young Professionals of Lancaster Group. Not to be confused with the Young Professionals Network of Lancaster. They are a realty group here in town. They do wonderful things as well, but we are a little different from that. We are a subsidiary of the Chamber of Commerce. We started in 2011. We have 180 members, and I have to say the millennial thing, 500 and some likes on Facebook. And we also pride ourselves in just really helping our young professionals grow as far as education and personal growth and development here in Lancaster. We have a couple focuses that I want to touch on, and they're in front of you in the handout that's coming around. The focus, and these are in order that we focus on, are personal and professional development, education, community engagement, and networking. While there are many great networking groups, it's not our primary focus. However, it's something that we do as we get together. Our main focus is professional growth. In Lancaster, we have amazing people that we can learn from. Many are sitting in this room. The good mayor, has come and spoke to our group before. Susan Stoughton, who many of you probably know, has come to speak to us before, and Dr. Uhl actually has come to speak to us as well. We really pride ourselves in being able to give our young professionals growth opportunities within Fairfield County. We love Columbus. I like going there. However, we want them to stay here. And the way that we do that is to engage them here with all of you. Community engagement, a couple things that we do each year. We do the toy drive, Maywood Mission. We actually partner with Reflections Nursing Home, which is pretty unique. We take two completely opposite ends of the spectrum generations and bring them together, and we actually give about $700 to $800 every year of toys to the Maywood Mission. It's one of our biggest community events, and it's one of the ways that we love to give back. In addition, we usually do the Bowl for Kids' Sake, and a couple other Destination Downtown. They put on the cinemas, and we actually have volunteered there as well. So we pride ourselves on giving back as well. Why do we do this? We want to continue Lancaster's success and tradition. To do that, we need people my age to stay here. If they're running off to other communities, they cannot help this one. So we really pride ourselves in trying to get the young professionals to stay in this community and to serve in this community. We do that through networking and volunteerism. 73% of millennials today look at a company's corporate social responsibility before they decide to work there. They're looking to know that the place that they're going to work is going to allow them to thrive in the community in which they live. So what am I asking of all of you today? If you are an organization that has young professionals, I ask that you promote us and that you really get behind them coming to our events. Our main kind of bread and butter event is our Power Breakfast. So once a quarter, we come for 1 hour in the morning at Keller Marketplace, and we listen to a speaker. It's 1 hour of their day. I ask that you would not make that outside of their workday. My age have a really hard time getting involved in events because they're working full-time. They have youngins at home, so it's really hard to get away. So I ask that you would maybe flex that and let them make this a part of their workday. In addition, we have 2 lunch and learns per year. Those are over lunchtime. They're the only ticketed event, and it's just $10 to pay for lunch. In addition to that, we do 2 after-hours events. Now that, of course, is after hours and would be on their time. But I ask that you would just make this feasible in your place of work for your young professionals, ages 22 to 40, to encourage them to come, to give back to where they live. I think that you will see that when they do, they are more engaged at work. It helps their leadership abilities, and it helps them feel confident in coming to you with things that are going on here. I think it would be a very nice asset to your business and well worth the 2 to 4 hours a month that it would take away from work time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Davis?
How do we get more information?
Sure. So Facebook
So I can
is
share
our,
it with people.
Yeah, Facebook is our main point of communication. We do have an email group as well, youngprofessionalsoflancaster@gmail.com. youngprofessionalsoflancaster@gmail.com. I'll say that one more time. It's a mouthful. But really, our YPs often just connect with us on Facebook, and that's where we post all of our events, all of our lunch and learns, and all of our after hours and volunteer activities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Well, Ms. Davis, thank you for being here. I've had the great opportunity not only to present, as you've mentioned, but to be a part of the Young Professionals of Lancaster, really, I think, since it got started several years ago, and it's been a great honor. I've got about 8 months left before I become, I don't know, a middle-aged professional of Lancaster or an old, I don't know what it'll be. We'll have to start our own group, Tom. Maybe you and me.
Well, I don't know. I'm fastly getting to that next zero number myself.
But it is a great asset to our community. It's a great opportunity to come together with like-minded people and to move forward some of the great things that are happening in our community. So thank you for being here. Let's show her our appreciation for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During each city council meeting, we set time aside to allow the voters and taxpayers of Lancaster to address city council on any item or issue or concern that you might have. If you'd like to address Lancaster City Council this evening, we ask that you come forward to the podium, sign in with your name and address on the clipboard, and then state the same, your name and address, for the record. We ask that, in accordance with the rules of council, that you would keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And please note that while city council members may choose to address your questions at a later time during the meeting, they will not respond to you during this portion of the meeting. With that, is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? Well, we see some new folks in the audience, and that's great. Some people that the paper has reported has filed their petitions to potentially run for office here, and so we welcome you and to each of you tonight for being here. We are grateful. Thanks for being here. Are there reports of standing committees?
There is one. Finance Committee meeting minutes for February the 11th, 2019, submitted by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the third reading of temporary resolution 1-19.
A resolution authorizing the Law Director's Office to apply for the Violence Against Women Act grant, VAWA, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mrs. Downhour.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record, resolution temporary 119.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 1-19. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an annual piece and the annual application we have to make to apply for the grant.
Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 1-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 2-19.
Skipped one. A resolution authorizing the disposition of city property no longer needed via auction or internet auctions for 2019, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record, resolution temporary 219.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 2-19. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the subject matter stated, it is so we can dispose of city property via auction on site or on the web.
Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 2-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 5-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of phosphate for use by the Water Department, offered by Mr. Woodard, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Woodard.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record, temporary resolution 519.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 5-19. Mr. Woodard.
This is an annual piece for the, to take bids in order to make purchases, and it's just something normally that we do.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 5-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 6-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of salt for use by the Water Department, offered by Mr. Woodard, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Woodard.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record, temporary resolution 619.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 6-19. Mr. Woodard.
This is just again, a yearly piece that we have to purchase salt for the Water Department.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 6-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 11-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for proposals for operation of the public transit system for the city of Lancaster and to enter into a contract, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporary 1119.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 11-19. Mr. Schoonover.
I was hoping we could combine discussion of the next 6 pieces all into one because most of these are annual, a couple semi-annual. I was going to give Miss Woody some props, and she's not here. But public transit, we just had our Public Works meeting on Friday, and for a department that has a annual budget of $2.3 million and gets $73,000 from the general fund, I would say they do a fantastic job of finding grants and leveraging the local dollars to fund that department for the community. So that's my discussion, if everyone's cool with that, for the next 6 pieces.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodyard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 11-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 12-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to execute a contract with Ohio Department of Transportation for the SFY 2019 through 2020 Ohio Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record Resolution 1219.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 12-19. I know what you've said, Mr. Schoonover, but I'm going to ask you every time. Further discussion?
I don't have any.
Other discussion around the table? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodyard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 12-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 13-19.
A resolution authorizing the City of Lancaster to apply for the Meals on Wheels Older Adult Alternatives of Fairfield County, Inc., 2019 through 2020 grant, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 1319.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 13-19. Mr. Schoonover.
Nothing further.
Any discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodyard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 13-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 14-19.
A resolution to authorize the purchase of 4 replacement vehicles from the state term contract for use by transit, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 1419.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 14-19. Mr. Schoonover.
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodyard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 14-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 15-19.
A resolution authorizing the filing of an application with the Ohio Department of Transportation for grants through the United States Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration, as authorized under the federal transit laws as codified 49 U.S.C. Section 5311, financial assistance for other than urbanized areas, and funds available from the Ohio Public Transportation Grant Program and Ohio Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program 5339, 5339B, and any other grant that become available through ODOT, and executing a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation upon each grant application approval, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 15-19.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 15-19. Mr. Schoonover.
Nothing further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodyard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 15-19 passes 8-0. Temporary resolution 16-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for Transit Department building renovations, offered by Mr. Schoonover, seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 16-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 16-19. Mr. Schoonover.
Nothing further.
Discussion. Mr. Woodard.
Just like to make a comment, we're not passing these so cordially that we haven't looked into them, but we want to thank an excellent job that's done by our people in getting these grants and passing this, bringing in a substantial amount of money, as Mr. Schoonover has said, over $1 million for about a little over $70,000 that we put into the deal.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Yes, Mr. Groff.
Just to point out, since it's not in the part that's being read too, for anyone that might be listening or questioning, 80% of this is funded by ODOT.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Further discussion on the motion to pass. May seem like we're moving quickly, but on the third reading, we've already worked our way through this legislation, and so we'll ask that the clerk call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 16-19 passes 8-0. Temporary Resolution 20-19.
A resolution authorizing the Lancaster Police Department to apply for the 2019 through 2020 Drug Use Prevention Grant, offered by Mr. Woodard, second by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. Woodard.
I hate to horn in on the Schoonover show, but it's my turn, I guess. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 2019.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 20-19. Mr. Woodard.
And again, this is by our personnel in the police department looking after a drug use prevention grant and trying to get more funds into the city to take care of a very serious problem.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 20-19 passes 8-0. Temporary Resolution 21-19.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for mowing and other landscape maintenance services for the city cemeteries, offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 21-19.
Second.
Bless you.
Thank you, sorry.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 21-19. Mr. Schoonover.
This is an annual piece through Public Works for contracting mowing for our city cemeteries.
Thank you, Mr. Schoonover. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 21-19 passes 8-0. Temporary Resolution 23-19.
A resolution to transfer funds for reimbursement of maintenance performed on state highways within the city of Lancaster on an as-needed basis up to a maximum amount of $125,000 for the calendar year 2019. Amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and Fund 290 and to appropriate from the unencumbered balance. Offered by Mr. Schoonover, second by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 23-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 23-19. Mr. Schoonover.
I don't have anything further.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary Resolution 23-19 passes 8-0. We now have second reading on Temporary Resolution 26-19.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the Income Tax Fund 216, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be the second of three readings, please.
Second reading on Temporary Resolution 26-19. Now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with Temporary Resolution 30-19.
A resolution to amend Permanent Resolution 51-18, authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids to enter into a contract for the River Valley Highland Sanitary Manhole Replacement Project, offered by Mr. Woodard, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Woodard.
This will be the first of two readings.
First reading on temporary resolution 30-19. Temporary resolution 31-19.
A resolution to amend appropriation budgets, then amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor in the General Fund 101, LDOT Fund 208, and General Improvement Fund 316, and complete something's missing there, and complete account-to-account transfers, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mrs. Downauer.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a mishmash resolution of budget corrections. We are appropriating a probation grant that was not included in the expense budget. We are appropriating $5,000 that LDOT received for the sale of a piece of equipment so they can buy another piece of equipment. And we're fixing $1.20 worth of line item problems in our improvement account and our fire impact fees. So this will be the first of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 31-19. Temporary resolution 32-19.
A resolution to approve an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging Company doing business as Blue Label Digital Printing and One Right Company, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is pretty exciting. This is an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging, known as One Right, and this is a enterprise zone agreement which benefits them to invest back in their business and more employees. So this is a good agreement that will go two readings. This will be the first of two.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 32-19. Temporary resolution 33-19.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor for the Gas Fund 602, Water Fund 603, Water Pollution Fund 604, the Stormwater Fund 606, and General Fund 101, and if needed, issue one then and now certificate for payment to PNC, offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mrs. Downauer.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution is to pay legal fees for the work that we've done to basically create a comprehensive plan to basically regulate our public right-of-ways. As more people want to get into those right-of-ways with, small cell technology and other things, we are working with outside law firms to develop regulations for the city. So this is a continuance of work that was done in 2018. This will be the first of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 33-19. Temporary resolution 34-19.
A resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the purchase of pipe and fittings for use by the Division of Water, offered by Mr. Woodard, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Woodard.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 34-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 34-19. Mr. Woodard.
This is a piece in order to enable us to go in and buy some 12-inch pipe for the water department. We're running a little low there. It's a $200,000 expenditure, but one that we do every year, and that's why we're asking suspension. We want to get the order in.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 8-0. Mr. Woodard.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rule, I'm sorry, gotta get back on the right one here. I'd like to make a motion that council pass and engross on the record temporary resolution 34-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 34-19. Further discussion, Mr. Woodard.
None.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Downauer?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 34-19 passes 8-0. Are there further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move on to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the third reading of temporary ordinance 1-19.
An ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Lancaster, Ohio, and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Groff, second by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Groff.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion the council pass and gross and enter upon the written record ordinance number 1-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 1-19. Mr. Groff.
This is an updating of the Lancaster codified ordinances to make sure that any ordinances passed over the last couple of years have been updated in the final file. The only question on this was at the first reading, and that the access didn't appear to be online for people to see the codes in their entirety. That has been addressed. Everything is available online, since it was a total of about, I think, 260-some pages, in case anybody wanted to check that.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour.
Yes.
Mr. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 1-19 passes 8-0. We now have second reading on temporary ordinance 2-19.
An ordinance to accept a general utility underground facilities easement necessary to construct, repair, maintain, operate, inspect, replace, and remove city utilities and appurtenances. Offered by Mr. Groff, second by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Groff.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion the council pass and gross and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered as 2-19.
Mr. Groff will need a motion to suspend first.
Oh, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion the council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of ordinance 2-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 2-19. Mr. Groff.
Yes, this is an ordinance, a general utility easement being granted to the city. There's an immediate need for this for a gas line, but other utilities can use this in the future. It's across the street from Ralston, so.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour.
Yes.
Mr. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 8-0. Mr. Groff.
I'll get back to this
Okay.
now. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion the council pass and gross and enter upon the written record ordinance number 2-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 2-19. Mr. Groff. Further discussion?
No further discussion.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour.
Yes.
Mr. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 2-19 passes 8-0. Temporary ordinance 3-19.
An ordinance to accept a general utility underground facilities easement necessary to construct, repair, maintain, operate, inspect, replace, or remove city utilities and appurtenances. No, that's not right.
Got to move to 3-19.
Sorry. An ordinance to grant a supplemental easement necessary for the provisions of electric services, offered by Mr. Groff, second by Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. Groff.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion the council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 3-19.
Second. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary ordinance 3-19. Mr. Groff.
This, in this case, is an easement from the city to AEP at the Huffer-Durden Park. It's a supplemental easement because AEP is just cleaning up an easement that already exists. The original easement was granted by the original owners. AEP is moving lines away from the park area in an effort to clean up the lines.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Downhour.
Yes.
Mr. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mr. Woodard.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 8-0. Mr. Groff.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion the council pass, engross, and enter up on the written record temporary ordinance 3-19.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 3-19. Anything further, Mr. Groff?
No.
Further discussion on the motion to pass? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Stonehour?
Yes.
Mr. Groff?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Witchard?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 3-19 passes 8-0. We now have first reading on temporary ordinance 4-19.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 25-18, repeal and replace existing 25-18, and declare an emergency for the non-union pay ordinance. Offered by Mr. Stoughton, second by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is correcting one pay grade in the non-union pay ordinance, and this will be the first of 3 readings, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 4-19. Are there further ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we have no tabled legislation. We'll move on to unfinished business. Does anyone have any unfinished business this evening? Mr. Schoonover, I see Miss Woody back there. Would you be interested in re-embarrassing her since she's here now regarding her great work?
Like giving her props when she's
Indeed.
in the room.
Yes.
She's fine. She'll just have to ask everybody else what I said.
Can watch it on TV now.
You can watch, yeah, on the internet. I was
you.
man.
Go ahead, do it.
I was being all super nice, and she wasn't even on time. So
Threw
Yeah.
her under the bus. There goes the bus.
best I can do.
Yeah, under the
We
transit
can
bus.
hug it out later, but
There you go.
I did give you props, and everybody in the room can attest to that.
I didn't
You're
hear
welcome.
that.
He did indeed. Thank you for your work in working to get so many dollars drawn down for the work that you do. We appreciate
Transit's
that.
normally on time.
Transit's normally on time, Mr. Wood.
There's going to be an app for that, so you know if the bus is going to be on time. So that's going to be cool.
Very good.
Yeah.
Further unfinished business this evening. Mr. Mayor, would you like to remind people about State of the City one more time?
Yes, the State of the City is Wednesday, February 27th at 7:30 a.m. at Olivedale. Get your tickets because it does sell out.
Yes, it does.
Don't miss it. We're doing something a little different this year that approximately 15 department heads are going to get up and go through 15 slides, which they have 20 seconds each to cover. So it should be entertaining.
Okay. Further unfinished business this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else have unfinished business? Any new business this evening? If not, we'll move on to the announcement of scheduled meetings.
The next regular session of council, February 25th. The meeting following, March 11th, both of those meetings at 6:30 here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings, Law Committee, February 13th, 9 a.m. at the Fairfield County Municipal Community Room. IT Telecom, February 21st at 7:30 a.m. at the Annex Building Conference Room. Finance, February 25th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. Service, March 8th at 7:30 a.m. at the Gas Department Conference Room. And finally, Finance Committee, March 11th, 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills this evening?
There are none to be presented.
Is there a need for an executive session? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Please remember to sign your legislation.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.